This, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not John, but the three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, say that there were two other people crucified at the same place and the same time as Jesus. Matthew and Mark say that the two men were thieves. Luke has it a little more open, calls the two men criminals, leaves room for what some think maybe they were rebels against Rome, and that was a common way to discourage rebellion against the empire. Matthew and Mark say that both of those men cursed Jesus. But Luke, and you might remember this from last Sunday, Luke might have had a source that was very close, who was very close to the foot of the cross and could hear some intimate conversations. He heard it differently. He heard only one man curse Jesus, and the other man had a very interesting conversation with him. These are the words you're about to hear from Luke's gospel.
Two others, also who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise."
Isn't that something? Jesus was born outside the main area, outside the hotel, outside the motel, had to be born in a stable. Now, Jesus is dying outside the main city of Jerusalem, outside the wall, on the hill called Golgotha, the place of the skull. And he's with not the saints of Israel, not the polished of the cultured elite. He is with two sinners. It's almost as if Jesus preferred their company in a way. He said that he had a mission not to the saved, but to the lost sheep. And here he was fulfilling his mission. He had been with the outcasts, including the prostitutes, the thieves, the tax collectors, the rebels, the sick who were accused of being sinners. That's why they were sick. It's almost like he preferred the company of the outcast. You know that? He preferred their company maybe because they were more honest. Maybe he would be partial to that old Billy Joel verse, he'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. And here were two of them. And those two sinners sort of reflect the two sides of our hearts. The first one, cursing Jesus, said this, "Get us down from this cross." The side of our hearts that always wants something from Jesus. "If you are the Messiah, get us down from this cross." Or as in Herod's song from Superstar, "Show to me that you're divine, change this water into wine. Do a miracle, get me off this cross." How often do we go to Jesus with a demand? We might not be quite as harsh, but at the same time, it's a demand. When I was in campus ministry at Mizzou, I could always tell you when the Missouri United Methodist Church's attendance would spike. That's a church where Pastor Amy Gerhardt from this congregation pastors. In that church, the high attendance was Easter, followed by Christmas Eve, followed by the Sunday before finals. Guaranteed. And they weren't there, those students, just to praise Jesus. Help me with this poli-sci final. Help me with the differential equations final. Help me. Get me down from this cross. And we all do it. But hopefully, we also all share what the other sinner said. "Please remember me." He said this right after he had said to his companion sinner, "We are getting what we deserve." He confessed, We're getting what we deserve, but this man doesn't. Maybe this sinner had seen Jesus preach to a crowd and heard him say that God is like that parent longing for a wayward teenager to come back home. That God was more merciful than judgmental. Maybe he had seen the compassion on Jesus' face when Jesus reached out and touched the eyes of a blind man. Or the compassion when he fed a multitude of the hungry. And maybe getting that picture in his mind of this man crucified with him, he says, please remember me. My family will remember me as a disappointment. My society will remember me as a failure. But please, Jesus, remember me as someone with his final breath turning to you. Please remember me. And the most amazing thing about this man, Jesus, is that he did remember him. In preaching this series of sermons, I have come amazed at how Jesus could look even beyond his own pain as he's bleeding, as he's crying, as he's stripped naked, as everyone's jeering at him and insulting him, how he could look past what was going on with him and pray for forgiveness for the ones who were nailing him to the cross and the ones who had put him there in the first place, thinking of others. And now, this old common thief, sinner, rebel, whoever, says, remember me. And what does Jesus do? Forgetting what he's going through, he turns to him and he says, truly I tell you today, you'll be with me. I have said this last Sunday, I'll say it again and probably will for the rest of the sermons. If Jesus had not lived, it would have been impossible to create a man like this. Today, stranger, you're going to be with me. Now, scholars have a little bit of disagreement with what you see on the screen. A few scholars take this passage and say we have the comma in the wrong place. The comma should be after today, so it says, I tell you today, you will be with me. And that carries the sense of in some future time, after you die and after you're in the grave for years, decades, millennia, there'll be some time in the future that you'll be resurrected and you'll be with me then. But more scholars, and I think it more consistent with the rest of the Bible, place that comma after you, right before today. I tell you, my friend, today you're going to be with me. When you die, you go into Christ's presence. Paul said the same thing later on. He said, I'm perplexed, Paul says in Corinthians somewhere. I'm perplexed. I'm torn between staying here and ministering and working with you or dying and being with Jesus. As in, not a delay, but right now. And this goes with what I believe I've seen in my own ministry with people who are dying. There's a woman in my former congregation who was on her deathbed, surrounded by family. She'd been non-responsive for a while. When moments before her death, she rises up in bed, she opens her eyes, she looks out, and she says, it's beautiful. Do you see it? It's beautiful. And she was just transfixed there for a few seconds until she said, lay me down. And she entered whatever it was she saw. A woman in this congregation, 2 days before she died, she was talking with people who had been dead. People she knew who had passed on, as if I'm talking with you. One of the persons she was talking to had died 2 weeks before, and no one had told her. I do believe that as we approach death, we see those who have gone on before us, ushering us in to the presence of Jesus the Christ. The one who promises us that today you will be with me. Look at those words. Be with me. If that thief shows us that a simple plea is what Christ asks of you, then this is the promise Christ gives you. You will be with me. And my friends, no matter how young you are or how old you are, I'm telling you this, that is what salvation is. Salvation is not saying magic words to get your ticket to heaven punched. That is doing nothing more than treating Jesus as an object. Salvation is coming to that point in your life when you understand that you are at rock bottom and you cannot make it on your own for the fullness of life that you need, that you want, that you desire. That's what salvation is. And to all who are able to say, Jesus, I don't want you as an accomplice to my lifestyle. I want you as the Lord of my life, and I yield to you and I follow you. That is when you hear the promise, I'm with you. I'm with you. I hope everyone hearing this knows what I mean from your own life. That maybe there was a time in your life when you felt like you were at rock bottom, you cried out, and there was this encounter with the living Christ. Maybe for you it was a time when simply in a service like this, or in helping someone, or in a personal reflection by a lake, you simply felt a presence that you couldn't understand, and it was peaceful. No matter what, I hope each of you know from your experience the truth of the promise that Jesus gave. I am with you. And that's what we're about. If I can help you as your pastor in any way grow deeper in that relationship or to have that experience for the first time, let me know. You know my email address and you know my office. It's the St. Louis Bread Company. It has windows. I'm serious. Because that's what it takes to be a Christian. That's what it takes to be a church. To be a church of the people who can relate to that sinner on the cross. I have said it before, I'll say it again. We are not a country club for saints. We are a hospital for sinners. I'm going to adapt that. We are not a country club for saints. We are a healing place for recovering sinners, of which we all are. And I personally really, really, really want to see Jesus face to face. I felt his experience, or I've experienced him like a cat and mouse game throughout my life. That there are times when I was a teenager that I accepted him and he felt as close to me as my breath is to my body. A few times throughout my life, in the decades since, I've felt similarly, but many times there's not been that experience. It's been, you need to work it out on your own, Greg. And the Holy Spirit helps. But when I'm on my deathbed, and when my life is going to be counted in terms of minutes and hours, and not years and I hope decades, I'm going to be A, scared, but B, there's going to be a tinge of excitement, because then I can see Jesus face to face. And where will you and I see him face to face at finally? I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise. Paradise. The Greek word for paradise comes from an ancient Persian word that refers to a king's park, a king's garden. King Cyrus of Persia had this immense estate that was walled in, and in it, like you see, flowers and trees and fields and meadows, a spring, a forest. The king would hunt wild game. He had that stocked with wild animals. And in the process of this, it was the most beautiful sight that anybody in the ancient world could remember. And Christians and Jews alike, that word would remember another garden, the Garden of Eden. And as Kirsten so aptly put in that song that she wrote, Eden and paradise. It's that new Eden. It's that time when you walk and you're with something that's not just something that's beautiful, but with someone who is beautiful. A garden. And it's not a mistake that in John's gospel, Mary Magdalene, who sees Jesus first, the resurrected Jesus first, what does she do? But she mistakes him for what? A gardener. someone who has been in that garden and is preparing it for you and for me. The twist is this about paradise. Reverend Hamilton, in his book, tells of a man in his congregation, Ron, who had recently retired from the police department after 20 years, and the call in his life was, ironically, to become part of Church of the Resurrection's prison ministry. It is ironic, isn't it? Because he would be ministering to the very people he put behind bars. That's what he said. But he did it anyway. He became involved. He found himself growing more compassionate and understanding as he started that. And some of the younger inmates sort of became like children to him, his sons, and they felt Ron to be like a father figure, a father they didn't have. And one of the men was a young man named Mike. And Mike didn't have much of a father. The father abused him, and at 14 he ran away from home. At 16 he stole his first car. At 17 he stole his second car, was incarcerated for a couple of years. Upon getting out, he graduated to robberies, bank heists. He got caught, sentenced to 20 years, tried to escape, got caught, put in maximum security. And there, by himself, he came to himself. He saw what a mess he had made of his life. He cried out for help, and he directed himself to the chapel program headed by Ron. They got connected. Ron became Mike's mentor. They became friends. Ron saw Mike become a new man, a new creation, as the Apostle Paul would say. Jesus, through Ron, saved Mike's life. And the irony is this, that Mike was a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi complete with swastikas, and Ron is black. But in paradise, we might be surprised that we might be sitting down at a table, and on one side there's an ex-white supremacist sitting next to us, and on the other side there's a black ex-cop. And they ask, "Would you please pass potatoes?" And Jesus says, "My pleasure."